Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sixer Sense podcast. And guess what, guys? It's our 400th episode. Chris, we started this thing back in 2019. It is crazy that we have been here for 400 episodes. Of course, now we have Michael on too. Welcome, Michael, newest member of the pod.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. But I do want to recognize some of the former members of the pod who are no longer with us. First, Jack Duffy. He used to be a contributor at the Sixer Sense. Got us into this. Shout out to you, Jack, if you're listening somewhere. Uriah Young came on as our producer / editor, and Uriah really brought this podcast to new heights. Shout out to you, Uriah. And finally, we got to talk about Jonathan Guy. Jonathan took over after Chris and Uriah left for a little bit. And shout out to you, Jonathan. Keep it going with me. I appreciate it. But guys, 400th episode. Any thoughts on that 400th episode before we get started? Chris, you've been here. You've been here since the very inception. I came in like 5 or 6 episodes in, but you've been here since the very inception.
Yeah, this is year number 6, episode number 400. Obviously, I took that took a bit off there in the middle, but it's been a minute, and it's cool that we're still doing this. Really happy to be here with you guys and to talk some Sixers.
Absolutely. Michael, you're the newest member. What are your thoughts about being a part of a podcast that's been around for 400 episodes?
Yeah, I was just saying to you guys, that's an impressive number. You know, kudos to you guys for keeping it going that long. Most podcasts definitely don't hit that milestone, so I'm happy to be here for the past, 10 or 15 that I've been a part of the team, and looking forward to keeping it going. Let's see if we can get to 500 down the road.
Absolutely. I'm all for that. Who knows?
I
Maybe we can get 1 million.
There we go.
But
that's the goal.
That's the goal, right? That's the goal. But anyway, Chris, I'm gonna give the reins to you for this episode. You're in the driver's seat here. We're just here for the ride.
Okay. Yeah. We have a really fun episode planned, guys. We're going to start off with a mailbag. We went to social media to ask for some Sixers questions, and you guys delivered. I'll go to you first here for this one, Michael. The first question is, how realistic is a Kevin Durant 76ers trade surrounding Paul George and the number 3 pick?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's obviously been a topic of conversation since the end of the season for the Sixers here. If we were going to do like a ranking in terms of like a number of like 1 to 10 of realistic, I would put it at a 5, which is kind of like average. I don't think you could completely write it off. I personally don't see it happening. I think there will just be so many suitors for Kevin Durant this summer if he's made available. Not sure that a Paul George and the number 3 pick would be the most enticing for Phoenix. Do they want that Paul George contract back on 3 years? Like, it seems like if they're getting off the Durant train and moving forward, like maybe they would want to kind of rebuild. That number 3 pick would be good for them, but then you're kind of stuck with this Paul George contract for 3 more years. So, again, I think they would consider it, but at the end of the day, I think they would probably end up finding a more attractive offer out there.
Yeah, for me, Chris, it's a if we're using the same ranking system, it's a -5. Look,
-5.
Yeah, no, like I like Kevin Durant. I would like him on the Sixers. I don't even mind trading Paul George for him. However, the number 3 pick is off the table. It is just off the table. It is not an option. Kevin Durant at third, what is he, 37, 38? Is
36.
Not worth the number 3 pick in any draft at this point, despite him being as great as he is for as long as he is. The long-term outlook on Durant with his injuries is that maybe he has 1 or 2 good seasons left before injuries really just take him completely off the board. So I would not trade the number 3 pick. Maybe a future, like maybe 2030 Sixers pick, sure, why not? Or maybe like the Clippers pick, maybe. But Durant for the number 3 pick plus Paul George? No, absolutely not. And I don't think Phoenix does this either. Like, I was going to save this for around the NBA, but let me just get to it here. The 2 head coaches that they have in the final stages of their interviews are not first-time or like not veteran coaches. And you don't usually bring in a first-time guy, especially a guy like a Johnny Bryant who's known for player development, if you're planning on trying to compete. Now, I don't really know the other guy, and that's another thing for later on. But like, my guess is that Kevin Durant's probably not the only person moving in Phoenix this offseason based off those moves. So that being said, now if they offer Devin Booker, if I offer Paul George and Devin Booker for the 3rd, Paul George and the third pick for Devin Booker, that's a completely different story. But I think Phoenix is going into a rebuild, and I don't think they want Paul George's long-term money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to go into a rebuild. All the reporting is that they're just locked in on Devin Booker long term and retooling around
Devin
him.
Booker's 30 years old. You don't bring in a first-time head coach on a 30-year-old star.
I think after like 4 straight veteran coaches that bombed, maybe you mix things up a bit.
But did Frank Vogel really bomb? I don't really think that was Frank's fault. And Monty wasn't that Monty was fine.
Be that as it may, they've fired like 4 straight coaches. I'm not saying they should have, or that they've made all the right choices leading up to this point. But it's clearly they're just trying to shake things up. I don't know if they're going to tear it all down. But yeah, in terms of like is it realistic? Seems not. Seems like Daryl wants to get younger. I think having a guaranteed top 3 pick and a good draft is really hard to pass on. Durant is, again, 36. Last year of his deal. There's not a lot of long-term certainty there. So I doubt it happens. I'm not like completely closed off to the idea, but I agree that going up the 3rd pick is probably a bit too steep. As much as I like Durant, the defense really fell off last year. So it's not something I'm too enthusiastic about. All right, guys, this second question came from a Knicks fan. I will divulge.
Okay. No, okay. Sorry, not trying to bash our fans. Of course not. Go ahead.
Now, what type of drugs was Paul George on when he called Tyrese Halliburton the face of the NBA? I'll go to you first, Michael.
Definitely something pretty strong, fellas. Something stronger than, I don't know, maybe something that's up there, definitely. And I respect that he's trying to give props to Halliburton, who's in the middle of a great playoff run here. Just led the Pacers back to the finals for, the first time in a quarter of a century. And I think in the process, he silenced a lot of doubters. I mean, this was the guy that was, voted most overrated by his peers for whatever that's worth. Not that that's, necessarily like a major thing, but I think he, in the process of the past 2 years in his playoff runs, he's really kind of emerged and solidified himself as, one of the young stars of the NBA. So I kind of get where he was coming from. He went a little bit over the top by saying he is the face of the NBA. I don't think anybody would agree with that necessarily. But, one of the young faces of the league, I think that's something fair in the conversation when we're talking about Halliburton. So, maybe Paul George was in Cali off some of that, legal stuff that's legal out in California out there, having himself a time. But I don't think anyone would agree that Halliburton is the sole face of the NBA. But he's he's working himself up the ranking there with the way he's played in this postseason for Indiana.
Yeah, look, me and Chris actually talked about this indirectly last podcast. We asked, like, where does Tyrese Halliburton rank after this postseason run, even if they bomb in the finals, which I don't think they're going to bomb, to be fair. I think, Chris, what would we say, top 5?
I think we're in that 5 to 10 range.
Yeah,
somewhere.
5 to 10 range. That's not a face of the league, but is that, like, to be clear, there's still the faces of the league is Steph Curry and LeBron James, despite them being old heads. They're still the face of the league.
Facts.
But I will say this: if Halliburton somehow pulls the upset, which I hope for the sake of this podcast and just to see Chris suffer that he does, that. I think that is a strong possibility. Like, he could become it, right? If he has like a finals MVP worthy, run, and he gets the Pacers their first NBA championship, because they have 3 ABAs, but if he gets them that, then I think, the conversation is real at this point. And I think just like Steph Curry did about 10 years ago, another point guard could change how the game is played. Going back to a more past first point guard system or setup system. So, who knows? But was it a little out of pocket? Sure. But it was the intention and the aim that he was going for in the right direction? Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Like, face of the NBA is really like an eye of the beholder situation. Obviously, Paul George played a good chunk of his career in Indiana.
Yeah, there's that too.
Some home cooking there maybe, but yeah, I mean, like, there's been kind of this obsession of finding like the next US born kind of face of the league. I think people are hesitant for reasons we don't even have to get into to be like, oh, it's Giannis or Jokic or SGA or any of these guys who were born internationally. Like, I think Ant has been kind of propped up lately as that guy.
Yeah.
And he may or
He
may
might
not be.
become it.
I think Halliburton is better than Ant right now.
Ooh.
And frankly, I think he has like the personality. Like Halliburton is out there like doing the choke symbol after beating the Knicks in the conference finals. He's got some of that like swagger that you need to have to be that sort of figure.
Without the baggage that maybe Anthony Edwards has.
Sure, I do think it maybe is tough just nationally on like in terms of who they're going to talk about on ESPN and whatnot for the quote unquote face of the league to play for the Pacers. He's just kind of stuck in a small market, which is not a problem. I think we all love him. We all have enjoyed watching the Pacers this season.
Well, a small market guy just won MVP, so that's not an issue.
But that's not. There's a difference between winning MVP and being the face of the league.
I'm just saying, like, small market shouldn't stop him from being the face of the league.
It just stopped with the the national like the endorsements and the commercials and stuff like that.
I mean,
the
media is global now. I'm not worried about the endorsement part. Maybe
sure.
and they can get enough national games in Indiana. I mean, look what they did with the Spurs.
Well, the thing is, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, Halliburton was voted most overrated by his peers, and they haven't talked about the Pacers on a national TV show like once this year. It's just they haven't been in the conversation. That maybe will change now that they're in the finals. It will if they win the finals, but you are at a disadvantage if you're not on like the Lakers or the Knicks, or you're not LeBron James, who's just this generational like demigod. But it's like a fair point. I'm not mad at Paul. I don't think he's like completely out of pocket or anything like that. So this next question, going back to the Sixers roster, how much is too much money for Quentin Grimes, and should the Sixers go beyond that too much threshold to keep him around? Michael?
Yeah, I think we touched on this like a while back on one of the episodes, and it'll be interesting, obviously, to see what sort of interest he gets from outside organizations. To me, I think he's in like the 15 to 20 million a year range that I would feel comfortable. Like if you're doing, say, we're talking like a 3 or 4 year deal. If we're talking 4 years, somewhere between like 60 to 80 total. I think that's reasonable for, still a young player, a two-way guy, a guy that projects to fit really well alongside the pieces that the Sixers already have in place, the building blocks in Maxey and George and McCain and Joel. He's a guy that slides in and fits pretty seamlessly in that rotation there. So I think there's definitely an incentive for the Sixers to get it done. What we saw from him this past half season since he was traded from Dallas to Philly, as we've touched on in the past, I think might have been a little bit of fool's gold on the offensive end, just because so much of the time that he was playing the offense, he was the focal point almost with all the guys sidelined.
Hang on, I got a counter there. I don't think it is fool's gold. The fact is that he was the number one option. Huh?
Yeah, but he's never going to be a top 3-4 option.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he'll be the top 3 option on the Sixers. What I'm saying is that I think the efficiency was real because he was the number one option. I don't think when you say fool's gold, it makes me think like, oh, it wasn't legit. No, it was legit. It's just that he's not going to have that opportunity in Philly if he stays.
Right, and that's where some of that value, like he's not going to be a guy that's going to score probably 40 points multiple times next season if the team's healthy or averaging like 20 plus points a game. And I think with that role in mind, you have to kind of curtail like how much you'd be willing to spend for a 4th, 5th potential option. But with that being said, like he really does fit well. He's like a prototypical two-way guy in the league today that you feel, really confident with, especially again with 2 younger guards and like Maxey McCain. Neither obviously are great defenders at this point. He's the guy that you could throw on and have defend the other team's better guard or perimeter player. So I would feel comfortable, like I said, anywhere between 15 and 20 a year. Anything over that, to me, I think would be a reach for Philly.
In some ways, he kind of reminds me of Aaron Aflalo a little bit, but that's not a knock. That's actually a good comp, in my opinion.
Yeah, he had a nice run back in the league for a while.
That being said, I think how much is too much? I think over 20 mil is too much, but the good news is there's barely any teams with cap space this year. And if the Nets or Pistons want to overpay, so be it. I don't know. We'll see. I think the Pistons might go big game hunting if I'm the Pistons. The Nets, who knows what's happening with them? They could go a lot of different directions. Would I overpay 220 mil? That's a tough call. I'll say this. The two teams in the NBA Finals have really deep guard rotations, like really deep guard rotations. So clearly that is an important thing to be successful in the NBA. Having multiple guards that you can throw out there that could be starting caliber guys or higher is really important. I'm not a GM. Thank goodness. I would be too stressed about this question if I was the GM. I will say that I think that if it is over that number, you got to consider it, right? You get what? How many days do you get on a restricted free offer sheet? 24 hours, right? It's 24 hours to match an offer sheet. The only two teams that are going to do it is either going to be the Nets or the Pistons, who can offer something outside of the Sixers range. And I will say the more likely team to do it is the Nets, because Sean Marks has a history of doing this. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he tried to overpay for Tyler Johnson and then Alan Crabb. I'm sure I'm missing some other guys here too, but the point is that it could happen. But like I said, I think if you want to try to build a championship team, you have to have multiple high-level guards on your team, preferably who can defend.
It's 2 days, by the way, for how long
2 days
has.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
48
you.
hours.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I would agree that 20 million is probably about where that line you don't cross is. Sixers obviously have to contend with the second apron. They're going to be paying like double digit, or 8-figure salary to whatever they do at number 3. Whomever that is going to get a pretty hefty chunk of change. So you factor in the 3rd overall pick. You factor in that you have 3 guys on max deals. Oubre, all these guys seem like they're going to opt into their options. That puts you up against a certain, like, you really don't want to be a second apron team if you don't have to, but you also don't want to lose Quentin Grimes. So I would say it's a bit of a moving target, but I would like to bring him back, obviously. I think he's really good. I don't think it was fool's gold, like you said, Lucas, in the sense that I think all the stuff he did is translatable to a smaller role. I think he's probably our best perimeter defender. He's a really high-level spot-up shooter. Like I have no doubt that he can fit and contribute to this team. But yeah, I don't expect the Nets and Pistons to like throw all their money at him. I don't know if that's the best use of their resources, but we'll have to see what happens.
Like I said, Sean Marks has done it before, so
it's true. There's a bit of a different situation though, as far as where that team is at.
You brought up a good point too, Chris, because with so much money tied up in like the big 3, the Sixers are really limited in ways that they can improve, and bringing back a guy like Grimes that they already have, even if you have to spend a little bit more, is one of the few outlets that they have to improve around that core. So I think that has to be factored in also.
Yeah, I agree. Like, that's a trade chip, if nothing else.
Right.
And
right.
counterpoint here. The free agent market is not big names, and because of the second apron, it's basically hard cap now. So teams have to be much more judicious, which means the NBA middle class, which I think I've talked about before, is going to get squeezed.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where his offer sheet ends up.
Yeah.
All right. Next question: is there a scenario where the Sixers can extend Gershon Yabusele for the non-taxpayers mid-level exception, which is a hair under $5 million, and is clearing out some cap space by letting Ricky Council, Justin Edwards, Jared Butler, and Lonnie Walker walk, enough to retain both him and Quentin Grimes? Michael?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a tough one to me, because I'm curious to see where the contract offers for Yabu in general kind of end up. Like, is that mid-level exception there? I think that's a little low for what he'd be able to get on the market compared to some other teams out there. I also don't know that letting Justin Edwards walk
is a good idea.
To do that. Like, as fun as Yabu was, and it was a great pickup from the front office to bring him, after he hadn't been out of the league for a while. Edwards is young. He's like a two-way guy. If he continues to trend upward and kind of hit his potential, he could do a lot of the same things Yabu does. Not the same size and rebounding wise, but in terms of like the defense and the floor spacing and things like that. So, I think probably not would be my guess. I think he would probably be able to command a little bit more than that on the open market. And I also, like I said, I just don't know that I would want the trade, especially if you're already bringing Grimes back, which I think is the organizational priority. It seems like bringing him back is like the top thing for the team. If you bring him back, I think, it would be tough, but I would be more okay with losing Yabu and bringing Justin Edwards back, which I expect the team to do.
Wait, is Justin Edwards he's not locked down for next year?
He has a team option for next year. They have to
Oh.
they have until the 29th of this month to pick it up.
They're going to exercise that. They would be stupid not to at
Exactly.
this point.
Yeah.
Look, I agree. I think that, it'd be nice to bring him back, but I think there's a harder number for Yabu than there is for Quinn Grimes at this point. Like, I think, he's a nice gadget player off the bench, but, there are matchups where he cannot play. He's not a starting level guy. If you lose him in free agency, you lose him in free agency. You wish him the best of luck. And I, like I said, I would like to have him back, but I would not. I think, letting Ricky go and Lonnie go, that's fine by me. I wouldn't want to lose Jared Butler or Justin Edwards at this time, especially Edwards. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think 4.7 million or whatever the non-taxpayers or the taxpayers mid-level is enough. The non-taxpayers is a bit higher, but Philly would have to cut cash in a way that I don't really think is possible with the number 3 pick coming in. You're probably going to have to pick between Grimes and Yabu, and I think the obvious pick there is Grimes.
Yeah.
I think Edwards is, if not better now, going to be better in the very near future. I'm just not even going to engage with getting rid of him. So,
Yeah.
I mean, him and assuming that it's going to probably Ace Bailey are going to be your 2 forwards of the future.
Yeah, we'll see. We're going to talk about Ace Bailey.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, if it's a front court guy, especially at 3 or 6 or wherever they trade back to, I think Yabu's pretty much gone, is what it is. It seems like he really loves Philly. Like, he's really leaned into going to all the football games and stuff. But
if he's willing to take a pay cut, let him stay. If not,
right,
say la vie.
But this is a guy who's never gotten his big check in the NBA, so I imagine he's going to take the money. Seems like the prudent thing to do. But all right, last question here is not really a question. It's more of a direct statement that I guess we can react to. This fan said, quote, "Get rid of Morey and Nurse. That's the news Sixer fans are waiting for." Obviously, that's not going to happen. They've
not this year anyway.
That window is passed, at least for this season. But how are you guys feeling about Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse right now, Michael?
I mean, the seats are hot for sure. Those seats are hot, and they're only going to warm up. I think that's been pretty well reported that they're basically coaching and executing for their jobs this coming season. If the Sixers aren't able to obviously turn it around from this past season and climb back into that contender conversation in the Eastern Conference, I think they'll both be gone. A year from right now when we're talking, we'll probably be talking about a new coach, new front office if things don't go better. I was kind of on the fence after this season. I was not impressed at all with the job Nick Nurse did last year. But at the same time, we kind of talked about it a lot, he had a lot of built-in excuses with the injuries and the absences and the roster lack of continuity and in and out. And I think a lot of us expected that he would get one more chance here with, and same with Daryl Morey. He built this roster, he brought Paul George in, he gave Embiid that extension. I think they're fine to give him one more opportunity this offseason and moving forward in the next season to see if he can, dig the team out of the hole that he kind of put them in a little bit. And, if not, well, in a year from now, it'll be an interesting offseason.
Yeah, I agree. They're both on the hot seat. If this thing start out slow this year, Nick Nurse, Daryl Morey, all could be gone before Christmas.
Yeah.
That would take a really bad start, but that would be something.
I don't think it's out of the question.
I
know Josh Harris is distracted with his new toy in DC, but we need you back over here making sure that this team is ran properly too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree that this is a prove it season for both of them. I'm much cooler on Nurse than Morey right now. I'm not too eager to kick Daryl out the door yet, but I too was pretty disappointed with Nurse, not just the fact that they tanked with a crappy roster at the end, but before they were trying to tank, they were playing some pretty uninspired basketball.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Nurse's seat might be hotter just based on the status and the contract that Daryl has, and Daryl's a pretty big deal just broadly in the basketball world. So I think Nick's seat might be a little bit hotter. I was going to ask you guys, like, what's the threshold they have to cross to save their jobs? Like, what's the minimum accomplishment that we need next season for them both to be around a year from now?
I mean, for them to feel absolutely safe, it had to be conference finals, which is totally possible in the East next year, right?
Yeah.
For them to probably be safe is getting to the second round again.
Yeah.
Maybe safe, first round, not safe, no playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, no playoffs, 100%. I think they're probably both gone.
Yeah.
Depending first round,
yeah.
Nick's probably gone. Daryl's probably not. Second round, they're probably staying. And Eastern Conference Finals, they're both staying.
The second round would be the one that would be interesting because that would lead to the most debate, at least among the fan base, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of agree. I think getting back to that threshold that they were before Nick Nurse came in. I mean, they had made 3 consecutive conference semifinals appearance under Doc Rivers, and that was kind of like their plateau. Nick came in.
What has let me just ask you this: what has Nick done differently that Doc didn't?
Well, I mean, they're different coaches. They run different. I would say Doc is more of an offensive guy. Nick is traditionally more of a defensive guy. Like Phillies,
our defense was horrendous last year.
It was. I'm not saying I'm not going to sit here and defend Nick Nurse, but they are different coaches. The results have not been different.
What has Nick done to improve the team that Doc wasn't doing before?
Nothing. To this point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's
I mean,
saying.
Sure, yeah.
I've been pretty vocally against Nick Nurse, but in fairness, I mean, at the same time, we do have to. I mean, this past season, I don't know that any coach, given the injuries and the circumstances, but like Chris said, even when they were somewhat healthy and they were still trying to win, the offense looked bland, uninspired. Like the players looked uninspired. One thing with Doc that, I think pretty much any player would, like, he's a player's coach and he at least gets the guys motivated. Even when like they had a plus 500 record his last year when Joel was out, it was a much smaller sample size. I think he only missed like 15 games, but they were like 9-6. Like they were still a competitive team.
Doc knows how to get the most out of his role players.
Absolutely, yeah. And so far in Philly, I haven't seen that from Nick. I think we'll go in and give him the benefit of the doubt for one more season moving forward. But I mean,
And to be fair, what has Nick Nurse and Doc Rivers did differently that Brett Brown didn't do, right?
Yeah. I'll just say, like, I think the Sixers roster is kind of, it's built in such a way that they're really reliant on Joel being Joel, and when he's not, it kind of goes to that.
Well, I think
a lot of people to blame for that.
That excuse doesn't work this year, right?
No, I agree. If they underperform, at least Nick Nurse is done.
Like this year, like Joel should probably not be averaging over 25 points a game. Like in all reality, like if I'm Nick Nurse, I'm giving him the Zion Williamson minutes treatment. 28 minutes a night. That's it. You don't get any more. Even if we need you, you don't get any more, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just like, and like your leading scorer should probably be Maxey. In terms of just pure numbers, maybe not the go-to option during the fourth, but like the guy that's going to get the most points,
most minutes too, for sure.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if Tyrese is up for that. I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Look, obviously there are a lot of factors we can't predict yet. Like, why did they lose? Like, who do they lose to? How they lose? The reasons? Like, they're just stuff we can't predict yet.
The Kawhi stuff was just crazy.
Yeah, like if they lose to a full strength, like I was going to say Boston. Boston's not going to be full strength next year, but if
New York Knicks,
if they lose to a very good like 65-win Cavaliers team or whatever in the second round in a 7-game series, that's different than if you lose to the I don't know the Pistons in 6 or whatever.
Well, okay, let's go down the rabbit hole because we're already here. What are the teams that is quote unquote acceptable to lose in the playoffs next year, just based off projections? Probably the Knicks, right? The Knicks, the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have to see what happens.
Knicks
over the
Knicks,
offseason.
Pacers, and Cavs are like the easy ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Who knows where if Giannis goes somewhere, that's a completely different story. But if you lose to any of those three, then yeah. But like if you lose to like you say the Pistons, well, it depends on how good the Pistons are next year, right? Like the Pistons could take another big step.
That's what I'm saying. It's very unpredictable at this point, but yeah, I would say generally if they don't get to the second round, we're probably going to have a slightly different organizational hierarchy next year.
Yeah, I will add that I think optics played a somewhat sizable role in the decision to keep Nick Nurse this year, at least from like what I was able to kind of gather. I think, having to change a coach again, you had Brett Brown, got Doc Rivers for 3 years, bring Nick Nurse in 2 years. It would have been a fourth coach in like a 5-year period. I don't think the optics of that all the way up to ownership, your boy Josh Harris, Lucas, I don't think that particular aspect he was happy about. I think if Nurse had already been here 3 years, there's a chance they already might have gone in another direction. I think the fact that it was still just 2 years and there was more like left on his contract played into their decision that, to keep him around one more year.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair. I mean, look, optics clearly have not deterred Phoenix from firing coaches, but I think that's probably the truth as far as Philly's concerned.
To be fair, Josh Harris is not toxic like Matt Ishbia in the least bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are different forms of toxicity, but I think that's generally true. All right, y'all ready to talk some draft stuff?
Sure.
All right. So there's been some very interesting sort of reports regarding Philly, San Antonio, this general top area of the draft. Philly obviously at 3. Jeremy Woo of ESPN wrote in their latest draft board that, quote, "The way the lottery played out didn't necessarily help Bailey, but his range remains narrow. The possibility that Philadelphia, angling to win more games next season, opts to go in a different direction could move him down the board a spot or two, with Charlotte and Utah likely to look hard should he be available." So we've been saying this. Like, I don't think anyone realistically has been saying that Bailey is an absolute lock at number 3. Even all the draft boards or all the mock drafts have Bailey at 3 have been like, but Philly will look at other guys. And I think it's fair to say that guys like Colin Knippel, VJ Edgecombe might be better year 1 contributors than Ace Bailey.
Okay,
right?
well, but yeah, and this goes back to the fundamental question, and only Daryl Morey can answer that. Are you trying to win now or build a future? Because if you're trying, like, honestly, I've said this before, you cannot. Joel Embiid's window, in my opinion, is closed. It is closed. You need to focus on the young guys. If that's the case, then Ace Bailey's upside is the thing that you bet on.
So I think they are absolutely trying to win games next year. Like, we all agree with that, right? They're not tanking.
They should be.
They can't
but
tank because they might lose that pick to OKC.
No. They're not tanking.
They're not tanking. I'm just saying, like, I would prioritize long-term potential over short-term gains.
Like, how much do they value getting immediate contribution compared to a guy that, the patience to potentially wait out an upside of Ace Bailey and see how good he could be, even if he's not contributing?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So my personal read on this draft, especially at the top, is that you can kind of do both this year. It's a really strong, like, Edgecombe is not. He has a lot of upside. Like, that is one of the craziest athletes in the NBA next year. He's like, there's some real potential to tap into if he can get better as a ball handler and a pull-up shooter. He's already like miles ahead of most perimeter guys in this class defensively. Like, Edgecombe's not a no upside guy. I would say his upside is not. No. You could argue he has more upside than Bailey. So if you're not sold on Ace Bailey, which not everyone is, I know you guys are, and a lot of Sixer fans are, but a lot of Sixer fans aren't.
I wouldn't say I'm sold. Like, there's
I think options. He has the biggest swing that, he has the biggest range. I'm
not like pounding the drum like they have to take Ace Bailey. Like, I wouldn't be upset if they take Edgecombe. I do think Ace Bailey has a really high ceiling.
Look, as long as they don't go Colin Knuppel with the 3rd overall pick, I think I'll be, or Maluwatch, I think I'll be okay.
That would be a bad pick at 3. Maluwatch. I would not be happy with that pick at 3.
Well, that leads perfectly into the next
that's why I said
report from Rafael Barlow at NBA Draft Board. He said that the Sixers are expected to consider Kamen Maluach and Trey Johnson at number 3. A couple more names to add to the mix. This isn't the first time we've heard those names. ESPN has reported those guys as prospects Philly will look at, but this is just more smoke coming on the horizon there.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl has said time and time again he's going to take the best player available. It's not a fit issue with him. He's going to take who he believes is the best player. Maluach is a guy where you could probably formulate an argument that he is the best player or the highest upside guy after the top 2. I don't think that's completely egregious. Dude is 7'2" in shoes with a 7'7" wingspan, mobile, super efficient around the rim, is going to be able to anchor a defense. If he reaches his ceiling, he's still 18. It's not impossible that he is a top 3 guy in this draft.
Okay, so that goes counterintuitive to your point that, you want to try to win games next year. He's more of a project than Ace Bailey.
Sure. So it's do we think Philly is going to go win now? I think Trey Johnson would probably be more of a win now swing, just based on how he fits offensively. Do we think Daryl is going to go win now? I think, the main point I wanted to get to with guys, I want to ask, scale of 1 to 10, what are the odds we think that Ace Bailey is the pick? Where are we at? How confident are we, not in him being a good pick, but that he's going to be the pick at the end of the day?
I say 7. I say 7 right now for me.
Michael?
I'm a little low. I would say maybe a 6. And these reports all coming out. They're not. The Sixers should be considering all these guys.
Yeah, look.
In the
smoke
top
screens
10.
are part of the draft too.
100%. And especially it's always a different source that are saying these things, and that's just how it is. These guys should be in consideration. I would be more concerned if the Sixers were just zeroed in on Ace Bailey at this point and not considering these other options. It does seem like he was probably the most likely fit, but we're still over 3 weeks from draft day, and as you got, anything could happen. So I'll say a 6 right now, but I think they'll consider, these reports will continue to come out too of them potentially considering other guys. I do think, and you guys know we've talked about this, I do think Trey Johnson is a guy that should maybe get a little bit more buzz as a potential option for the Sixers at 3. I know I see Chris making the face, and I know the concerns about the defense.
Thank you.
The kid's 19. He played 1 year of college basketball. He has really good size and athleticism. Just to think that he can't get to a passable level defensively, to me, just seems too quick of a judgment to make off of a young kid like that.
Counterpoint. Sure, that might be the case. He might be passable, but how many wings do we have right now on the Sixers who are quote unquote passable defenders? You get what I'm saying here? You don't want to have just a whole bunch of okay defenders on the perimeter. That's the argument for VJ Edgecombe, honestly. That's the argument. If you want to upgrade the team's perimeter defense, VJ Edgecombe is your guy.
I would say that Paul George and Quentin Grimes, when they're healthy, are above passable.
But yeah, that's frankly, 2 guys out of how many wing players in your rotation?
Well, I was going to say, I think Justin Edwards is going to be... Yeah, he's pretty darn good down the stretch. I don't think they're completely devoid of perimeter defenders. I think the concern is just that McCain and Maxey are so small, and how do you deal with that? But I'm the lowest of all these guys on Trey Johnson. I really would be kind of bummed if that was the pick, to be frank.
I think it's a reach at 3. I do think it's a reach at 3. He's more of a trade back 5-6 guy to me.
Yeah. And you guys know I am lower than consensus on Ace Bailey. I wouldn't be too thrilled with that either. I think 6 and 7 is probably the right range as far as how likely is it, maybe even higher. Every mock draft from plugged in draft sources still has him going there. But I do think genuinely, I've been mocking Edgecombe there. I just think it makes more sense. I think his upside is just as high, if not higher, and he's a better immediate fit. So I would not be surprised if it's Edgecombe. I really wouldn't be surprised if it's Knipple. I think he's another guy who has a deceptively high ceiling, and he's going to be really, really good right away.
Would you be mad if it was Ace Bailey, Chris?
I wouldn't be mad. I'd be disappointed. I think that's where I'm at with that.
Okay, Dad.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
be mad. I'm just disappointed. I'm the dad of the podcast here, okay?
Yeah, you should be saying that, Lucas.
Right?
It's a good draft class. Bailey is a good prospect. The upside is definitely there.
He would be the number 1 pick in last year's draft.
Probably. And I will say a lot of my concerns with Trey Johnson kind of mirror my concerns with Ace Bailey, where he's just not a guy who gets the rim a lot. He's not creating a whole lot of separation on all his shots. He's pretty reliant on some tough jumpers right now. The defense is definitely significantly worse than Ace Bailey's at the moment. He's kind of like bargain bin at Ace Bailey. I'm really kind of out on Trey Johnson, but
do you think you're undervaluing the offense a little bit, Chris? I mean, defense, don't get me wrang, defense in the NBA is important, but the NBA is a scoring and especially a shooting league.
I think Trey Johnson could very easily become Buddy Hield.
I mean, like,
would that be a bad thing, though?
With the 3rd overall pick, yeah.
I don't know.
I'd be a little bummed if his Buddy Hield. I think Knipple is a better offensive player. Edgecombe is not like some non-shooter. He's going to get to the rim more than these guys, draw fouls, super quick first step, and he can shoot and pass better than both those guys.
Well, I like Edgecombe.
He will not shoot, but he can shoot, and he's a better passer.
Let me ask you this. What would be the craziest zag that Daryl Morey could do at the 3rd pick?
It's a Mailbag. That would be the one where people were like, oh boy. That would be a really big swing, and it would
also signal the end of the duel.
I was going to say that would send up some red flags, I think, about how they feel about Joel moving forward. If you're using the 3rd pick in a draft that we're all saying is pretty deep and a lot of talent, you're using that pick on a center with the Joel injury, I think that would send up some major red flags for sure.
I actually think the bigger red flag, besides that, I mean, that is a big red flag pick, but I think because we know how Morey likes his guards, if they go Jeremiah Fears,
I don't know.
Before the lottery, he was mocked number 3, but like, how does Fears fit in with McCain and Maxey? It's just it doesn't work.
I think that would be more of a we're picking the best guy here and we're going to figure out situation than Mailbag. I think if you pick Mailbag, you're pretty deliberately like putting a clock on Joel Embiid.
Can we all agree that there's no way Morey's going to take Kasparas I can't even say his last name.
He's not going to be the 3rd pick. We don't have to talk about him. But we do have to talk about another report from NBA Draft Board and Rafael Barlow, which I found particularly interesting. Now, I will say
I heard something similar too.
On Twitter, Matt Moore of the Action Network and Fansided, well, not on Twitter, he actually wrote this on the site today for the whiteboard. No, he said this on Twitter, but anyways, he said that he had heard similar things. And the quote from an NBA executive on NBA Draft Board right now is, quote, "I know everyone is saying the Spurs and Harper, but San Antonio is tricky because you never know what they're going to do. It's very hard to predict what move they'll make, even in a situation like this with the number 2 pick. If there's somebody, they like it too. They don't have to go with the consensus." That I think is fair. Like, San Antonio is a very unique organization in terms of how they run things, and they look for a specific kind of person and player in the draft traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all like Harper, and I don't see any reason why Harper wouldn't fit their like general organizational MO, whatever, but you would have a lot of guards. Harper is probably the best spot-up shooter of the trio of him, Fox, and Castle. Castle really is not much of a shooter right now. I think he could be better than both those guys long-term. I'm still taking Harper, too, if I'm the Spurs. But I mean, obviously, if he falls to 3, we all want them to take Harper, right? We've talked about this.
Yeah.
But this seems to open the door for that in a way I hadn't even, considered for weeks. I just thought that was not a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think this is possible? Do we think there's a realistic chance that San Antonio zags? I don't know who they would zag for.
I have
maybe
few ideas.
Khan. I think Knipple is a very Spurs guy. I think him being number 2 overall would be kind of funny behind Cooper. But
can I chime in first? Because I saw something on Twitter and I wasn't sure if and I don't know if it was Twitter or ESPN, but something. But I saw somewhere that the Spurs were considering to trade back. Or the Sixers, no. The Sixers were trying to trade up to 2.
Yeah, we talked about it last week as a hypothetical.
Yeah, no. I saw it somewhere online. Yeah.
Windhorse had mentioned in passing, Sixers could try to trade up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a report, but Windy is generally pretty precise with what he says, So
let's just say that this, regardless if the Sixers trade up or, the Spurs go left, we get Dylan Harper. I think we would all be happy with a 6'6" playmaker. That's what the Sixers need, really. is a wing that can play make next to Maxey and McCain, right? But to go to the Spurs, like who they could zag to if not Dylan Harper. Obviously, we talk about Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. I don't think Jeremiah Fears or Trey Johnson is on that list. Knuppel, like you said, could be. I don't think Maluach is either. But I will say another center is. I think Derek Queen is a Spurs type of guy. I know that would be a stretch, but I kind of like Queen next to Wemby. Is that crazy?
So no, but I don't think he's going to go number 2.
I was going to say
I don't know. I don't think so, but like anything's possible, right? Or maybe they go Colin Murray's Boyle, your guy.
Chris would be happy about that.
That would be more reasonable. Now, I don't put too much stock into this sort of thing, but I know NBA teams do. Like Queen did not test very well athletically at the combine, and he's been kind of falling on a lot of the consensus mocks out there. So I think he's probably more of a late lottery guy at this point. I think Khan is a very Spursy player, and I think Edgecombe, if you want to be like he's the culture guy who's going to compete his tail off and make smart plays and is also super athletic, you could maybe build a case around Edgecombe there at 2. I wouldn't do it, but I could see maybe the Spurs thinking that's the move. But
I think Edgecombe Bailey. I think Edgecombe Bailey and Knuppel are 3.
I don't think Bailey is a Spurs guy. I really don't. I don't think Bailey plays Spurs basketball, as we like to say. But maybe, who knows? But I would like Dylan Harper in a Sixers uniform. So I'm hoping that San Antonio makes a mistake here. They don't make a ton of huge mistakes like this. The draft record isn't perfect, but it's the number 2 pick in Harper's.
I'm trying to think the last time they busted on somebody. Like, when was the last time they had a bust? It's
probably been a while.
Yeah, certain guys like Sohan haven't really hit at the highest level, but
bust.
No, yeah.
I'm trying to think, do we count second round picks? No, Juwan Blair even played one good season with them.
So Pit Panther right there, Juwan Blair, my boy.
Yeah, I actually did like him because I had an ACL surgery as well.
Yeah, he was playing with no knees. His knees didn't even work. He was still balling.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy, and no knee braces either.
Yeah, man, he was a dog.
He was a dog, but he only lasted 1 or 2 seasons because he had weight gain problems. But
Yeah.
Look, the Spurs know what they're doing, I think, generally speaking. But...
I can name their last bust. I remember. It's Josh Primo.
Okay, good one.
Yeah.
All right.
He was a bust for some off-court stuff, too.
Well, yeah, off-court stuff, but he wasn't getting on the court either.
Yeah, wasn't very good either, yeah. It's kind of double whammy.
It's double whammy there.
But yeah, look, if they want to pass on Dylan Harper, I'm all for it. I support them in their, live their truth.
I think it's possible. I think obviously the most likely scenario by far is that Harper's the second pick, but there hasn't been concrete reporting, not that there would be, but there's a lot of options, and I feel like the Spurs are not a blank canvas because they obviously have some building blocks, but they could use a plethora of different areas, and it wouldn't be shocking. I'd put it low, but
I think that's the thing is they're not a blank. They're the one team where you're they really do have a lot of guards who might overlap. Two very prominent guards.
So
especially Fox.
You could see them going in a different direction potentially.
So here's now that we were talking about this, I feel like VJ Edgecombe is a Spurs guy. I see him going number 2. Dylan Harper goes number 3 to us, of course. Number 4. If you're the Hornets, do you take Ace Bailey or do you zag and go somewhere else?
Of course, I'm going to say they should zag and go somewhere else, but
he seems kind of like a Hornets guy.
Ace Bailey is the most Hornets prospect of all time.
He seems like a Hornets guy.
Okay.
Such a Hornet.
So then we go back to Fears going 5, Trey Johnson probably going 6. Well, does he go 6 to the Wizards? Oh gosh,
Wizards could go wherever they want to go.
They got except for maybe center. Well, it depends. Do you see Alex Sarr as a center or do you see him as a power forward?
Who knows? We'll see what they.
Well, the thing is, double big lineups are coming back, right?
Yeah, you need to be strategic
Pascal's
with it.
6'8", but he's 6'9", but he's a big 6'9". He's a traditional power forward in my a traditionalist-ish power forward, and then your team, the Thunder, have Chet Holmgren, who's 7'1", playing power forward. So
Yeah,
bigger power forward lineups are coming back.
they are. I don't know if Sarr is gonna. You need to shoot at a certain level, but we'll see. They could go with Maluwatch. They could go a lot of different ways. All right, y'all ready to talk about our poll from this week? All right, we ran the poll on the Sixer Sense Twitter account. This week's question, guys, was: is Joel Embiid still a top 5 player in the NBA next season? This was a 2-3 split. 2/3 of our responses, 67%, said no. 33% said yes. I'll go to you first, Michael. Yay or nay on Joel Embiid as a top 5 player next season? How are we feeling?
It pains me to say this, fellas. I'm going to say no. I don't see a world where Joel Embiid is a top 5 player in the NBA next season for several reasons. A, we just don't know what the knee situation is going to be like. Still no update. We're 7 weeks out from that surgery. Nothing from the team. No idea. And even if he is recovered, we don't know how much he's going to be. I mean, it's the availability. It comes back to that. I think if you're talking about the top 5 guys in the league, it has to be a guy that you know is going to be able to be out there. Joel's 30 now on the wrong side of it. I think he's going to be trending down. I think he could still be an all-star level player, but top 5 is such rare air. And there's young players that are coming up. There's still guys that are like Jokic and Giannis that are still at the top of that conversation. And I just think Joel kind of, unfortunately, over the past 2 seasons has kind of lost his spot in that top 5 since the MVP season and the injuries. And I just don't really see a world where he's plays enough and he's available enough to kind of climb back into that top 5.
Yeah, look, think about it like this. He had one MVP. He was on the way to getting a second one, hands down. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah, he would have won.
Then the knee thing happened. And then he got, like a meniscus trim surgery, which basically trims part of the meniscus off. For a guy that's 7'1", 200 and God knows how many pounds, that's not good. And then, he comes back, he plays, he still puts up some big numbers. And then, he comes back plays the Olympics, had one good game in the Olympics, right? Otherwise was kind of like, right? And then, then he comes back next season, looks like a shell. Looks like a shell for the majority of the time that he was out there, right? Was wearing a giant hulking brace. I can tell you firsthand experience, wearing one of those type of braces playing basketball really does limit your movement. It makes you think about what you're doing. To be clear, I think offensively, Joel can still be elite. Let's be clear. That mid-range jumper is not going anywhere. He literally just has to get the ball at the mid-range and just post up at the mid-range, get it, do a jab step, and take a mid-range jumper, and it's butter, right? Like, that's... His offensive game is not going to go anywhere, right? Even if he has a reduced role, even if he has the reduced minutes like I suggested earlier in the pod, he's still going to be putting up probably anywhere from like low-end 22 to 26 points, right? The question is defensively, right? Is Joel going to be able to hold up defensively with this if the knee continues to be a problem? Like, if he has to manage the pain, is he going to be able to be mobile enough to not be like a problem, defensively? And that's the real question. I agree with Michael. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 player. And hot take, I don't even know if he's going to be a top 20 player, depending on how he looks when he gets back. Because all he did was have a scope to clean out debris. It wasn't like a major surgery. It was just to clean out debris. And we don't have any updates 7 weeks in. Now, granted, the Sixers are pretty tight-lipped when it comes to Joel's injuries. I get that. But, like, still, normally people would start doing on-court stuff slowly, at least started doing something there, and we haven't heard anything. So that's
nothing.
That's my concern.
Yeah, famously tight-lipped. I think all outcomes are on the table at this point. Like, I agree, Lucas. There's a world in which he just isn't the same guy, and he's not a top 20 player. I don't want to completely rule out the chance of him being in that top 5 conversation, though.
I mean, look, if he comes back healthy, then yes, he's the top 5 player again.
Right.
Yeah, like I think the top 4. The top 4 is pretty. We've had this conversation. It's like Jokic is 1. Probably put SGA 2, Giannis 3, and Luka
I
at
think
4.
you could edge out Luka depending on if Luka keeps on coming into the season out of
It's I think the odds of Joel coming back and being 100% like MVP Joel are probably pretty low. We don't really know, but probably low just based on the trends. But is like 90% of peak Joel Embiid still a top 5 player? Probably. Like Joel was really, really good.
I
There's a
mean,
pretty
Jason
big
Tatum's
drop
going to be
off.
out next season. Steph Curry and LeBron James are going to be another year older.
Yeah, I think Joel
Durant
can
older.
still be better than Brunson and Halliburton. I think that there's a world in which that is still the case. And those are the guys that you're going to start having that conversation with. So I don't want to rule it out. He's a really special player. And if he can just stay on the court, he was still extremely impactful last season when he was out there and he didn't look right. He was still putting up 24 a game and had crazy on-off splits. So it's like he's still a good player. Just his presence impacts winning. We'll see. That's like the stock answer at this point, but it is a true mystery. I would say the safe answer is probably no. That's probably what I would have voted in this poll, but I don't want to rule it out yet.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Who knows? He is only 32. He was really close to getting an MVP back-to-back seasons, a year ago. So like it's possible. Is it probable? No. We have
that's
probably
fair.
less than a 5% chance of this happening, but it is possible.
All right. Are you all ready to go around the NBA?
Yeah, even though I kind of already, stole my first one, I'll go and figure out something else. You guys can go first.
All right, Michael. I feel like we just have to start with like finals predictions. We've sort of already done this, but now that it's set, let's just start there.
That's literally what I was going to throw out there.
Sorry.
Thunder. No, you're perfect. Thunder and 6 for me. I just think they've been dominant all year. Chris, I mean, I know Chris, you've been banging it all year. How deep and well-rounded.
Oh,
and
no,
dominant
Michael, it's not all year. Since they traded Paul George. It's since they traded Paul George.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was really Pokuševski who really got me hooked.
Is he even in the league now?
Nah.
No, he's in, I believe, in like
overseas.
Serbia.
Wow.
He didn't last long.
No, he did not.
R.I.P.
But
yeah.
Yeah, I think Thunder in 6 games. I think it's going to be a fun series. I'm definitely not one of these people that's lamenting the fact that it's Indiana and Oklahoma City. I'm actually excited for some fresh teams. It's a cool matchup with two of the best like up and coming younger guards in the league, SGA and Halliburton, going head to head. But I mean, the Thunder have been dominant all season for a reason. They've been dominant throughout the playoffs for a reason. SGA is the MVP for a reason. They're deep. They got multiple very, very good defenders. I think they can throw at the Pacers guys to give them a tough time. And at the end of the day, I think they're just the more well-rounded, deeper team. So I think it'll be competitive. The Pacers are definitely a good team, but I think Oklahoma City gets the first title.
Look, as much as I'll be cheering for Indiana because, I just want to see Chris suffer, it's probably going to be OKC. It's probably going to be OKC. I know last time we were on the pod, I said probably 7. I feel like it's probably going to be more like 6 now. It's probably going to be 6.
That's how it feels.
Look, and like this is weird because usually in the NBA Finals you have teams of contrasting styles. They're basically the same style team in a lot of respects.
Similar.
That's very similar, right? But the difference is, like you highlighted, they have more defenders on their team. Like Indiana's a better 3-point shooting team, but like the amount of defenders on this team is like pretty much there is no who's the defensive liability on this team. Like no, seriously, in the rotation
there isn't one.
There isn't one, right?
Unless you're playing Isaiah Joe, there's really not one.
Yeah, and they're probably not going to do that.
Yeah, I think I don't have the exact numbers pulled up, but Indiana's offensive rating is like 2 points higher than OKC's, and OKC's defensive rating is like 8 points lower than Indiana's. So that's
sounds
like
about
OKC's
right.
defense is historically good. That's their special skill.
I will say this: Tyrese Halliburton has to play at this level in order for them to have a shot, because during the regular season they basically shut him down.
Yeah, they're two very different like point guards. They do both play fast, but like Indiana's offense is pretty different than OKC's. Like Indiana, like Halliburton's just not SGA. They're very
Halliburton's not
contrasting.
looking for his shot. He's looking the pass. He's a pass first point guard. We don't have very
So-
many of them left in the NBA, but he is a pass first point guard.
It will be interesting because OKC's defense these past couple series has really centered on just swarming the guy with the ball. It was really effective against Jokic in that game 7, but Halliburton is normally bringing it up in a different way and running pick and rolls, and I'm curious to see if they if they all just collapse on Halliburton. Like, he can pick them apart as a passer. I read somewhere that like OKC's biggest defensive weak point has been corner threes, and that's been one of Indiana's biggest strengths. So there is like a path here for Indiana. Rick Carlisle, we've talked about it a ton, is a very good coach. He knows what to do.
I mean, he's taken out a juggernaut in the finals before too.
Yeah, so I don't want to rule Indiana out here. I do think OKC is just like on such a historic level with their defense right now. It would be pretty surprising if they lose. I'm kind of with you, Lucas. I think I was like OKC in 7. I might really feel more like 5 or 6 realistically. But I really don't want to discount Indiana because they've proven folks wrong like several times already in these playoffs.
Yeah.
I really think Halliburton like has it. I think he is more than capable of having a great series even against this defense. Now, if you just think Lou Dort is going to completely smother him one-on-one for 4+ games, then it won't be a very long series. So that'll be like that'll be the big test, is can he handle Lou Dort and force them to kind of change things up?
Well, okay. And defensively, if I'm the Pacers, I'm putting Andrew Nembhard on SGA, of course, right? Like, that just makes sense, right? And then
I don't know. SGA's, like 4 inches taller than Brunson. I feel like Neesmith might be the guy who gets.
Well, okay, but I'm just gonna say, well, Neesmith is shorter than Nembhard anyway. That's not even the point here. And just hear me out.
He's
and
stronger,
then I would put Pascal Siakam on Jalen Williams. Because honestly, here's the thing. If you can get Jalen Williams to have a bad game, you have a shot of winning it. Because when he scored 17 points or less in the playoffs this year, they're 1-3. So if you can shut down Jalen Williams, you have a shot. And then I would put Nembhard on Chet and say, beat us.
Yeah, I think that's reasonably fair.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting, like tactical matchup.
And we'll see if even Hartenstein starts in the series. He might not. I wouldn't start him.
I think they'll start him, but I don't know if he'll be finishing games, which has been
he
pretty
might not
common.
even be starting the second half of games.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a one big situation for OKC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go OKC in 6. We'll just say OKC in 6 across the board here.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be OKC in 4. It could be Indy in 7. I think both those outcomes are not impossible, but we'll see. It'll be a really good series, I think. Like, I'm genuinely excited.
Yeah, I think
it'll be good basketball.
So Michael, did you want to go?
No, that was kind of the finals thing was my thing.
Okay, well, I got a few things that I want to talk about. I already talked about the Suns head coaching search down to Johnny Bryan and Ott. I don't know Ott's last name, but nepotism yet again wins in the NBA, guys. Danny Ainge's son got hired away from the Celtics and made president of vice president or whatever, as president of basketball operations or something like that for the Jazz. That nepotism in the NBA, yay! It's the one place it's probably most accepted.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is what it is.
Yeah,
all the Celtics people have nice things to say about Andy Ainge. They're like, he's good, so it is what it is.
But the main thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is, I know we hate the Knicks, but like, let's talk about it. Should they try to pursue Kevin Durant, or do they just need to build more depth? I think it's more depth. I don't think they need to do a major shakeup. I think they just need to get some more players that they can rely on during the regular season.
Yeah. I don't know how they really add a lot of depth, but
you just got to hope that maybe some free agents will sign for the vet minimum.
Yeah, no one of real import is going to do that.
I mean, like,
though.
okay, like Malcolm Brogdon might, right? He's a free agent.
Sure, but he's not going to be playing more than 15 minutes in a playoff series next year in New York. Like, realistically, there aren't a lot of minimum guys who just have huge needle-moving impacts. So, I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of, like, Cat trade chatter and the report about them maybe not loving Cat's defensive effort.
Well, you're playing him out of position. He's a power forward, not a center.
He's not a power forward. He's
not
center.
a center defensively.
He's been a center his whole life, Lucas.
He's not a good center defensively. He actually played decent defense as a power forward in Minnesota. Look at the numbers.
He's not a good... Everyone next to Gobert plays decent defense numerically.
Did he not play better once he shifted to power forward with Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup? The answer is yes.
That is a Mitchell Robinson thing and not a Cat thing, is what I would say. Cat has been a center his whole life. He did it with two
different centers. Like, he's done it with two different centers now.
If you put a good defensive center next to Cat, the numbers will be better than if you don't. I agree with that.
Yes, then he's better as a power forward than a center. It's that simple.
Depends on who the center is.
That's fair. But like, if you could have a good defensive... No, that wouldn't work. Sabonis wouldn't work next to him. No.
So,
but like Sabonis,
it's like semantics.
Sabonis isn't gonna go to New York. No, they're not gonna do that.
I know.
Though that does bring a good question. If he asked for a trade, where would you trade him to?
I don't think Cat's gonna ask for a trade.
No. Sabonis. I'm off Cat now.
I don't know.
The zestiness is too much for me to talk about.
I don't want Sabonis really. If I'm any team, it's not. He's good, but it's like, what's your ceiling with Sabonis?
What's the difference between him and Jokic? What, 3 inches?
Dude, what? Jokic is so much better.
What are you talking about?
I mean, defensively, they're basically the same player. And offensively, is not that much different.
Yes, it is, Lucas.
I mean, it's world different offensively.
Please.
I'll give you the
Jokic
defense.
can shoot
We're
better.
losing credibility by the second.
No. Jokic can shoot better. I will admit that.
If Sabonis was on Jokic's level offensively, he would be considered a top 5 player in the world, and Sacramento wouldn't be the 12th best team in the West. We don't... Come on. Jokic has touch and an array of moves, and he's way better as a shooter, which is significant. Like, being able to shoot from the perimeter... I told you he was a better shooter. I admitted that. Yeah, but, like, come on. Jokic's brain works 12 times faster than anyone else's. You don't have to pretend like they're remotely similar. Sabonis is maybe
so much Sabonis hate on this podcast.
It's not hate. He's like a top 40 player who puts up numbers in the regular season and then has been exposed in the playoffs constantly. It just is what it is.
All right.
Someone will trade for him. He's a good player. I don't know who or where or how you maximize that very unique skill set, but
not in Philly.
I guess we'll find out. Not in Philly. That's the important part. But yeah, I really don't know what the Knicks do. I feel like they're just going to run it back. I would entertain trading, frankly, Bridges. I don't know if I want to pay Mikal Bridges a bunch of money, but
after giving so much up for him,
could you trade him and OG Anunoby for Kevin Durant?
That's like I don't want to do that.
I wouldn't do that.
Now,
one or the other.
What about him and Giannis? What about for Giannis?
That's the thing. If you can trade for Giannis, obviously. But they just don't have enough stuff. It's not going to happen.
Unless Giannis asks to go there and they want to honor Giannis, which has happened before.
It's not going to happen. They've said that it's not going to happen. So, yeah. John Horst, I believe the report was that he wants to bleed a team dry so that Giannis doesn't want to go there anymore, was how the report was phrased. So I don't think the Bucks are going to be like, okay, Giannis, we'll trade you for 2 bags of Doritos and a penny. I think they're going to
2 bags of Doritos is pretty good. I'm just saying, but
depends what flavor we're talking about.
We're talking about original nacho or Cool Ranch.
I was going to say, what about Cool Ranch?
I've only had nacho.
Cool Ranch is good.
You've never had any other Doritos, Chris?
No.
What?
How old are you again?
I know.
I know you're young, but damn.
I didn't really get into normal Doritos until this year. It's just not been on my radar.
Wait. What other chips have you not had?
I don't know.
Have you had Cheetos?
Yes, I've had Cheetos. I've eaten plenty of chips in my life, guys.
Okay, but not Doritos? That's
I was convinced in elementary school that I didn't like Doritos. So I just never really had them until 6 months ago. And I was like, oh, these are pretty good.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Doritos are the best.
I can't. They're too spicy for me. But
I will try some and get back to you guys on the next episode.
Try the
we
Cool
want
Ranch.
How about that?
We want a full
Cool
review
Ranch.
and breakdown on the next episode
Okay.
of some
Okay.
Doritos
We'll
flavor.
do our Dorito power rankings later this week.
That'd be some good off-season filler material, actually.
Actually, we do have some off-season material that we are going to be doing. We are going to be doing redraftables of Chris's mock drafts that he started since he's been here since 2016, right, Chris?
Yeah, I didn't realize I was gonna have to like tell people what I wrote in
Oh,
2016.
I want this to happen.
Okay.
Not just for the content, but for myself too.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about it. Yeah, Knicks are. I really don't care what happens with the Knicks as long as they don't win a championship. That's my take. To be frank.
Fair enough.
I hope they mess
What
it up.
city deserves a championship more right now? The
Philly.
No, I'm talking about in the finals.
Oh, deserve.
I'd say
I don't
OKC.
know. Indy's
No, I
been
say
like
Indiana. Indiana's been in the NBA since the 70s, and they haven't won one.
yeah, they've got like a
They got a
60-year
cold
streak
Super
going
Bowl,
here.
bro. They got a cold Super Bowl. Oklahoma City
Yeah,
has
but
nothing.
like that's one.
That's true. OKC
But
does
they also had
nothing.
Andrew Luck retire on them at like the age of 28. So
They
like,
also had prime Peyton Manning.
yeah, they traded. They let him walk. So
That's the thing. Is like it's kind of like the Sixers thing, where like the Sixers have been competitive in all of these seasons except this year, and they've been in the second round most of them. They've been like a good team, but it like almost hurts more when you're so close,
Yeah,
and then you don't get there. And Indy's been in that headspace for like 60 years, whereas OKC, they've been around for like what?
Well, I promise you
long.
this: the Colts are not going to be good this year with their quarterback room.
Facts.
Yeah.
And on that note, let's wrap things up because we're going to get into football
into some
now.
football talk.
Anthony Richardson is going to
podcast
figure it
for
out.
that.
That's my take. But okay, yeah. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Sixers Sense podcast, our 400th episode. We just really appreciate everyone listening and tuning in and engaging with us every week. We will be back with more Sixers talk, of course, more draft talk, more free agency, all that fun stuff. You can check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcast as well as on YouTube. Go hit that subscribe button. We're going to have some video episodes coming out in the future. And until next time, go Sixers, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Adios.